I'm not going to throw open to the audience at the moment because I'm going to ask them the opposite question, which is what's not worked. But after they've talked a little bit about what the negative sides of it, I'd like to kind of open up to the audience and talk a little bit about the successes and what's not worked. Because I think they go together hand in glove. And certainly it's nice to see such a lot of IMP students here. And I'm really interested from your point of view, what you take for granted now and what may have been therefore as a success because it's something that's in there. So just in case you still got that said, so what has not worked? Either of the two of you will specify or change. You want to take what's not worked?
I think, well, I recognize that you're absolutely right. Groups like Preserver and Archive-O-Matic, there have been a couple of companies out here. I really had expected by this time much more commercialization to have happened, and much more commercial involvement in the process of developing tools. Still, if you want to put in a bid for a project, you struggle to find some SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises, that have an active interest in the preservation end of it. You might find them willing to work with you because they're going to get some tools for crowdsourcing, or they're going to get some special new kind of user interface, but you're not going to get them very, very strongly focused on developing preservation tools if you get them to work with you on the repository. So I think that's a big issue. The other thing I thought that we were going to see a lot of was scalable, distributed solutions. So, preservation in a box. For sure, that's been almost 20 years now. We're going to have preservation in a box-based solutions, but they're as far off now as probably as they were 20 years ago. Because, and I understand now, because the number of problems and the amount of change that's happening, it makes it very difficult to produce preservation-based solutions. The other thing is, we've actually completely failed in office and personal work practices. So every one of you is an archivist, a records manager at least, let's say a records manager. And you are mandated that by the government because you have to maintain your own tax records. So you're mandated. So most of the records that you now get, say from your bank, from your credit card companies, where you're going to find lots of these receipts all come to you electronically, or they're only available to you in electronic form. But I bet most of you expect the institution that's creating them to curate them for you and to keep them accessible. You are very unlikely to engage in much curation except for that box of paper-based receipts that you actually got, and maybe the 3 or 4 that came attached to email, until your email gets hacked and you lose that account and you discover you lost all those as well. So one thing we have really failed to do is to develop certain utilities and personal archiving capacity. And that I think is an extremely big failure so far. And the last thing that I think is to capture this thought in the area of broad-scale awareness. So I said there was a lot more awareness, but it's not in the broader communities. And the final thing is, yes, the DPC, the Digital Curation Center here in Canada, these are all the good guys here in Canada.
Not in Canada,
Glasgow. In the UK, are wonderful examples of the excellence that can actually happen. Canada doesn't have anything like this. France doesn't have anything like this. Germany doesn't have anything like this. There have been lots of attempts, but internationally, we have not produced these centers of excellence that we have here in the UK, which is really unfortunate. And that means that we still have a long way to go in terms of creating professional societies and work groups that are going to leverage and help to address the problem of preservation across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with that and reflect a little bit, and to be critical, I suppose, of the DPC itself, and as far as like sustainable international collaboration. And I don't just mean a project or two where you have some friends together and you get some external funding to make it happen. That works, we know that works until the money runs out. Sustainable international collaboration has proven really difficult, and we've tried, I've tried, DPC has tried, right, the different routes, you know. We've tried it through simply having kind of friendship agreements with our partners overseas, NCDD and Nestor. We've tried it through very formal, trying to establish, you know, networks and think of the Alliance Permanent Access of ours, which turned out to be incredibly difficult to sustain. And really, I think, haven't delivered, and it requires that, I think, sustainable international collaboration, partly because the job of taking the message out is so extensive, the problem is so pervasive, and the last thing in the world that you want is for all of that invention and creativity, which has been here in the UK, to have to be reinvented, you know, in other places. So there's been a huge. I can come back to the next point, if you like, on the list, is the reinvention of the wheel. Let's reinvent a cliche, perhaps, but you know, the number of times we've sat down and heard another plan for X that already exists. And maybe we can have a show of hands or some suggestions from the floor as to what has been created that has been created again, just for the fun of it. I'm thinking today in my own head about repositories, not repositories, sorry, registries. File format registries is a case of it. But not only, you know, there have been too many initiatives where we've set things up only to discover either that they already exist, or someone else a year or two later trying to establish effectively the same thing. So that's because I don't think we have sufficiently strong, sustainable collaboration or mechanisms for people to collaborate. I'll come back to the topic of certification as well, because I think a lot of people think certification is a bad idea. I think it has to some extent been a bit of a dead end, or has at times been a bit of a dead end. Now let me observe, you know, think about this morning, just waiting for the train. It seems to be sometimes when we think about certification, it's like we're trying to design the timetable for the railway network before we've got the train, before we've invented the steam engine, you know. We're trying to worry a little bit about how all these things are going to operate together before we've actually learned how to get the thing on the tracks to start with. It's a bit of a strange metaphor, perhaps, but if we aim for standards which are so complicated and so demanding that they're unattainable, then we're setting ourselves up for failure, and in fact we're setting ourselves up for some sort of irrelevance. So finding the right methods for certification, I think, has been problematic for us. I'm much more a fan, let me go on record, much more a fan of this sort of Jambora, institutional-based or the self-assessment approach, I think, just now, than I am about a sort of external audit approach. Let me also kind of finally say on that theme, it seems to me to become apparent that not only do organisations have different routes to digital preservation, because everyone starts in a different place, the number of people I need to say that digital preservation starts by not having the backups on the floor of the server room. Okay? Some people look at me and say, backups? It has to start somewhere, and every organisation has to start, and they all have different journeys as a result of that. But not only have they different journeys, actually I think they've also got different destinations. Because we don't all need to keep everything forever. That is a requirement to some extent of every institution, although they themselves don't need to keep everything forever. The requirements in medicine, the requirements in engineering, the requirements in banking are different, and we have to recognise that. And if we have a certification method that forces everyone into the same destination, we're going to end up with everyone looking like a space science centre when they're actually trying to be a bank or a children's home or something else. Let me observe a little bit, again being self-critical here, if I may. I regret we haven't saved more. There have been too many stories of things just going, disappearing, and the amount of influence we seem to have had has been strange. I'm thinking of technology vendors. You know, we've hardly had the influence of technology vendors I think that we ought to have had, because they could take the problem away. You know, I'm a not very good archaeologist who doesn't like it when it's rainy and muddy. Why am I trying to solve this? But actually, Microsoft could take this problem away from us, I would have thought, you know. So let's think of Google. In 1 week, we had Vint Cerf's Digital Dark Age speech. There wasn't a friendly metaphor in there. It was all dark ages or black holes or take your own pick. And in the same week, they decided to delete Google Code. I'm just saying. You know, one organisation, one very powerful organisation, can be so schizophrenic about it. It's It's problematic. We need to have a better, clearer influence on those sorts of organisations. Let me finish by saying that any digital preservation solution that starts with data loss as the problem is probably going to end in failure. The problem has to start with the real world, it has to start with people, and it has to start with opportunities. And the only reason we're involved in digital preservation isn't for the sake of the bits. It's for the sake of the people around us. It's for healthier, wealthier, smarter, safer, greener, more creative, more transparent. And any solution for digital preservation which doesn't start somewhere by thinking of those issues is probably going to be an academic exercise, a slightly sterile exercise, which won't deliver for the long term. I also noticed when I did my homework for this question, I ended up with an awful lot more things that have not worked than things that have worked. So I'm going to start. I'm just Scottish, and I'm going to look for your cheerful, upbeat American to save me here.
I just want to pick up two things. That I think the word you were looking for was benefits.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the problems is we've talked about this for a long time in digital preservation is that we're always selling risks. And we're not spending enough time defining what the benefits of doing preservation are and sustaining and talking about that as a way forward. And all the work that's been done on sustainability has all been focused on, trying to address risk, not trying to talk about the benefits of doing it. But I just wanted to ask you one other question, and I have another comment. Now, why has the DPC been so successful here, whereas Nestor was a disaster in Germany in the end?
Well, I mean, I think, maybe again I'm too Scottish on this, but I think the DPC could be more successful. I want us to have ambitious for more. Let me start by saying that. DPC and maybe Sharon and Sarah can come in on this too, but I'm really focused on the idea of the DPC. We have no grant. We have no right to exist. The only right we have to exist, the only mandate we have as an organisation is to provide services to the members, right? The members are really quick to tell me, believe me, my board are really quick to tell me when they're not getting their money's worth. My first board meeting, I was in post for about 4 days, I should tell you what happened. Chris Rusbridge was on the board at that time, and I came in, I'm going to write my work plan, I'm going to have all these things, all these metrics, key performance indicators, all going to be successful. You just need to give me a month or two to get that all in place, because I'm only in the job 4 months. And Chris, God bless him, looked at me and said, William, I don't really care, I don't want to see your work plan. I'm not going to approve it, I'm not going to approve or disapprove it, I just want you to do stuff, and if we don't like it, we'll sack you. And that actually is incredible, and there's a fundamental truth there about providing services to our members, which means we have to have constant ongoing engagement. We're not depending on voluntary effort. But